wanted to do something fun. Yeah, I wanted to do something different. And there is apparently this huge TV sensation. 18, I've already forgotten it. What is it?
1883.
So anyway, it's this huge sensation. I watched some episodes the other day, and I was like, "Damn, I don't even watch TV very much, but this is really, really good." It is a prequel, sort of, to Yellowstone. I might be getting that wrong, but our guest can explain it to us. And so anyway, I want to introduce you to a couple of really cool people. One of them is basically kind of like my brother-in-law. That takes more explanation than I'm going to provide here. And then the other one is this really very delightful young woman that I met at a Christmas party. So we've got Nemo and Mayo. It's like Sonny and Cher, kind of. But yeah, so just, hey, tell our audience the type of work that you're both doing on this show.
So in typical background work, like whenever you watch a movie or a TV show, and your main characters are in a publicly populated area, you got all these bodies walking around doing stuff, baristas passing out coffee, waitresses, what have you. These are all background actors. These are the people that bring life to the movie. Without that, you just got, it's a really awkward kind of thing. And so throughout this show, it's no different. You watch them in the towns, watch them, in the parlors, whatever. You got patrons, you got, life going on. The main story of this show follows a couple characters who are escorting a group of immigrants across the U.S. to find a new home. And so we play in that group of immigrants. Now, starting off, they had about 7,000 people audition for this position, and about 80 were selected. And so we were part of a group of 80 people.
Wow.
Who were to be this established immigrant. And so they called us core immigrants. You had other, so if you just come in for a day or a couple days and, that's all you're there for, an industry term for that could be a day player. And so we had lots of day player immigrants who would come in for random things, but we were part of the core group who was established from the very beginning to, go the duration of the pilgrimage. And then once the show started, our group of 80 starts dying off, not in real life, like in the story, the canon, we're dying off, left and right, until eventually the story takes us all the way to Montana, where by that point there's only a handful of us left. And we were still part of that group all the way to the end.
So, really getting, it sounds like just the full experience of being a consistent part of a movie and being one of the core people in the movie or the TV show. Because like I said, I've seen some of the episodes that you've been in, both of you, and you do get a good amount of screen time, even if they're not speaking roles. So Mayo, did you were you surprised, because he said that thousands of people auditioned and only 80 were chosen?
I did modeling for years and years. I want to say I'm about to hit my 8-year mark this summer, so that's fun. But I wound up doing all that, and then I got into wanting to do some more acting again, and found this one and kind of just went for it. And it wound up being a 6-month journey that changed my life. But it's been a blast. It's been life-changing. Yeah.
So were you surprised? Were you thrilled when you found out? How did you find out?
Well, okay, so actually that's a funny story. We didn't find out until we were already probably a few months into doing the show. And then we found out from one of our friends on set who's a part of crew. They kind of just broke it down. They were like, no, y'all got chosen out of 7,000 people. Wow. And it kind of hit us then. So we didn't even really have a crazy reaction other than oh, we got onto the show. So, but when I got my email of me being told that I made it, I was very excited. I was like, oh, I get to do another stint of acting. I didn't know it was going to be 6 months, but it was, and I had a blast with that 6 months. So,
and Mayo, that 6 months, was that where were you primarily at? Because you were shooting in different locations, right?
Yes, we were. We started in Fort Worth, and then we went from Fort Worth to Weatherford. We were in Weatherford for quite a bit of that time, and then we went from Weatherford to Palo Pinto, and then from Palo Pinto we went to Montana, right? Yeah, Montana.
Wow.
And then we did Montana for a little bit, and then we came back and we did Amarillo, or well, technically Panhandle, Texas. And then we went from there to Lubbock, for Guthrie. And then after we did that, we got a break. So now we're waiting to go back to Lubbock.
I see. Okay. Wow. So you've gotten really to go on a kind of a pioneering trek of your own, not to be too corny about it. Okay. Here's one question I have. So what was the audition process? You said that only 80, and this is to you, Nemo. You said that 80 people out of 7,000 or something were selected. What was that audition process like? I'm curious. And what do you think put you over the edge? What do you think made you that one of those 80?
I couldn't tell you what put me over the edge other than just my sheer willpower. I went into that process with a lot of intent. I like to speak from my own personal process with this. I'd mentioned before, I live at this kind of special housing situation. We have, ceremonies day in and day out, and like our biggest ceremony every month is a indigenous style sweat lodge. Pure lodge.
I've heard of those.
And I had actually like taken this prayer into there because, I was really at a point with myself internally. I was like, man, like looking at the life I want to live and the things I intend for myself, like everything's been great and like nothing short of blessings up to this point, but it's still like nowhere in the ballpark of what I'm going for. And so I went into that session with like just shutting all my angst and everything, and just getting to myself to a point of gratitude that I could say, thank you, life, for all of this that's happened so far. Like, thank you for the commercial work. Thank you for all the opportunities I've had up to this point. It's all really been really great. But what I really want is to be playing characters. I want to be playing like feature film, like on big stories, not these little shorts and not these, small bit jobs that I'm getting, and not these commercials.
Right.
And so I prayed specifically. I was like, I'm going to be in a high-paying job on an iconic production. I had no idea that was going to be this. So what the actual process was, we showed up at a gymnasium where they were setting up a stage, for a lot of the interior shots that they were doing. And we sat in the bleachers, and the directors came out, or producers came out and talked to us. And they basically just give like a 10-minute lecture on like what to expect with this job. And I mean, that was the majority of the process, was just sitting there getting this lecture on what the expectations were. And after that, to conclude that, he's like, all right, we're going to wrap this up. We're going to have you all come over here in small groups at a time, like 5 at a time. And we're just going to get a look at you. We just need to see how you look. Because essentially that's ultimately what they're looking for. You're not getting hired to speak.
Not heard. You're
not getting hired for any lines. You're getting hired for how you can contribute to the aesthetic of this piece of art.
Right.
But just before they brought us off the bleachers, he's like, I just want to have a fun little exercise with you. Just a quick little improvisation. Did he do the tornado with you guys?
Yeah.
So
he did several with us.
He just did the one with us.
He did several.
Mayo, what's the tornado?
He did the tornado with them, but he did multiple with our group. So I didn't know this.
What did he do?
So the tornado was like, they tell you, you're an immigrant. You've never seen a tornado in your life. How do you react? It's kind of a interesting exercise that they wanted to see how people would react. So
they wanted to see some kind of action, just to get a general feel. I'm assuming all it was is like, okay, you're pioneers. You're thousands of miles away from your home. You're in your wagons. You're out on a prairie, and oh no, there's a tornado. Oh! And he goes through that, and so they're looking for like who's doing what. And then
going to happen in the show is that you're going to have to exude without speaking. You're going to have to exude these emotions of these people who are experiencing the danger of the frontier, right?
Precisely.
Awesome. Okay, so you did these exercises. Okay.
Did that exercise, and they're like, all right, come on down, everyone get in line.
And they would do 5 to 10 people at a time.
Yeah, and so we're all in a single file, and then they're in a hallway, and 5 to 10 at a time come out here, spread out, COVID 6 feet. And and then they just walk around, looking us up and down, taking notes.
And they had us turn around too.
Yeah, they're just looking us up and down, left and right. And then goodbye. And then you'll hear from us if you hear from us.
That's part of it though. That's part of the it's not really a judgment. It's they're looking for very particular looks all on screen. So they kind of give you a once over and then they tell you to go on your way.
That's really interesting. So then that begs the question then, you're obviously both attractive, charismatic people, but what do you think, but I'm sure there were others there like that. What do you think put you over the edge, got you in?
That's what I say, auditioning is one of the most hellish experiences, parts of my career. Because you go into this room, you got 50 other versions of you. And
that's well put.
I think I can speak on maybe something that I picked up on that might be the case, but it's not like a for sure thing. Yeah. But it seems like a lot of the people who got chosen in the end to be immigrants that lasted the longest and stayed the longest with the group were people who, when they did the acting exercise, they didn't hide from the tornado, but they kind of were just standing there oh, what is this? Because it was almost, in my opinion, they were looking for people who actually did take into account the character, because the character wouldn't have known how to react to that. They would have been mesmerized because there's this giant thing of wind in front of them that they've never seen before that looks like some sort of entity or something.
See, I got up and
but you got up and you ran. You didn't just hide, because everyone that I was in a group with, for the most part, except for 2 people and myself, hid under the benches and the bleachers and stuff. And the producers in that moment actually looked at the crowd and said, "No, you wouldn't know to do that." And
they looked at it.
And we're looking, for real actor, people who were good enough actors to actually.
There were 3 of us. That was it.
I don't know.
Barely.
Ken looked right at me because I got up and bolted. I was like, ah. And
maybe Nemo, you were strong in the other aspects. You have a very expressive face. I'm going to put up some pictures of you if you send them to me as well, from just looking at just your face, even very, very expressive and intense, and also very versatile. It doesn't even look like you sometimes. I think the first time I saw you in 1883, the first scene, I was like, that's a very intense looking guy. And then I was like, oh my God, it's Nemo. So
Nemo.
Exactly. So
yeah, I got really self-conscious and paranoid in our acting exercise because I got up and bolted, and immediately one of the head co-executive producers, Ken, he looks right at me and yells as it's time. He's like, "Don't overact."
Oh no.
He's and he goes, "That's the quickest way to get cut out of here."
Well, you must have calibrated it then correctly after that, because they
I guess I don't know. I guess I had the look.
So my question here's probably one of the biggest questions then, and we'll start with Mayo. As a non-actor, but someone who does YouTube videos and stuff like that, and loves film. Everybody on my channel, all my audience, they know I love film, and I used to teach film classes at college. I wonder what it would be like to be, 2 feet away from Sam Elliott, or to be on what is going to be a major production, because Yellowstone was such a hit and is such a hit. And I've seen a few episodes, not enough to make an educated appraisal of it, except that it seems like I can see why it's a very successful show. But this is like a kind of a, prequel to it in a way. So what was it like, I guess, to be on set, to be around some of these great, greatest of all time actors like Sam Elliott, and to be on an A+ production, A+ film production, in terms of production values and stuff? What was it like for you, Mayo? You have any thoughts about any of that?
If I could just put out a few words that could capture how it was for my brain, I'd say probably awe-capturing, and also very, for a lack of better term, grueling, but also super, super humbling in a way. I want to say I didn't actually register or process that I was on this big of a production until I was probably halfway through.
Really?
Because it doesn't really set in. You're kind of just like, I'm working, I'm here, I'm doing what I normally do, until something happens that makes you go, oh, right. We're on something that
is a big deal.
millions of people are going to watch. This is crazy.
Right.
And then, it's also very humbling, but spending every single day on set with my number one person to meet in life. And you're like, oh, right. This person's really, really famous. I should probably
this person's a big deal.
And so it kind of hits you. And that's kind of what it was for me. It didn't hit me till halfway through. And now I'm like, wow, I did that. I went out there and I did that for myself. But it's mesmerizing for sure. But
I love that. I love that. I love that it didn't hit you until six months into it. But I kind of get that. Yeah, no, I totally get that. What about you, Nemo? What was it like for you? Did it take 6 months to dawn on you, or did you know it was a pretty big deal?
I don't know that it has dawned on me yet.
I feel that too.
So she comes Mayo's had a lot of experience in film already, but majority of her work's been in modeling.
Yeah.
Whereas mine's been just nonstop film for the past 6 years. So I've already worked a handful of jobs with some pretty up there celebrities, a couple A-listers. I've even been their personal assistant on productions before. So I think for me personally, I got over that whole, starstruck kind of thing. There was, I did get completely starstruck over Christoph Waltz.
Whoa.
That was the one person I've met.
Where were you from him? Where did you meet him?
That was in Austin a few years ago on this production, Alita Battle Angel.
Okay.
And I completely embarrassed myself.
Tell me how.
So for weeks, I've been working up to this because, this is still really early on in my career. And so I was really paranoid and nervous about, making a bad impression, working up the guts to say something to him for weeks. And I had finally I wanted to impress him and stand out by, telling him a phrase in German. I wanted to give him a compliment that doesn't exactly translate in English. The phrase is "Du siehst bezaubernd aus," which roughly translates to "you look enchanting." But again, it's I don't really know how to explain it well beyond that. But it's very nice.
It sounds like a disaster is coming. Oh my God. Tell me.
Well, it had been announced that this was his last day. And we're shooting the last bits, and he's picture wrapped after this.
Mm-hmm.
He's done for the show. We don't have anything more to film with him. And so the scene we're shooting, we're in a bar and there's been an explosion, and all of us are scattered around the room, all kind of ducked behind stuff, and he's standing in the center of the room. looking down in the hole where this explosion just happened. And we had cut, and we were moving cameras. We're making an adjustment, but everyone stays right where you are. And there was just like almost a dead silence. And I thought, like, this is the moment, like it's now or never. And he just happened to look right over at me. And I'm on the ground, and I called out this phrase to him. I'm like, "Du siehst bezaubernd aus." And like, that's all I wanted to do. This guy, he like busts himself, and then he like walks around the room right up to me. And again, I'm on the floor, like in a like crowd, like in a like, you know, prone position. And he like squats down right in my face. And he's like, "Sorry, what was that?" And I like,
how awkward.
like, he really wanted to hear what I said to him.
And the moment had passed.
Just gibberish came out of my mouth. Like, I like just complete nonsense. Just a big salad of German words.
Yep.
And,
Yep.
And he goes,
yep.
He's like, and just gets up and walks off. And I'm like, ah. But that's the only time I'm really kind of starstruck.
Oh my God, Mark, that's so funny because I had, you know, I don't know, I've mentioned this I think in one of my videos, but maybe I've told you this before, but you know, I think I did, but you know, when I met Martin Sheen, you know, for the first and only time when I met him, I was a huge Apocalypse Now fan, and anyways, and so I run up to him. And it's just me and him, and then his, you know, his assistant or whatever. But I basically, like, I had the floor. Like, no one else even recognized it was him. And so, you know, what did I say to him? I said, I stammered, "I've seen Apocalypse Now almost 200 times." Like, that was my big opening salvo there. And it's so funny because I mean, it was true. And before anybody thinks that I'm weird, I've taught Apocalypse Now in almost every class that I've ever taught. And so that's why I've had to like watch it a lot. So I haven't literally just, but
I'm not just obsessed. I teach this.
but I am obsessed with it too. I really am. So in 1883 though, then did you have any starstruck moments or anything?
None of that, because like first off, you know, I had no prior relation to, you know, country music, contemporary country music. So Tim McGraw, Faith Hill,
I'm
you know,
the opposite.
You know, names I obviously know, but like I don't know anything about them or their lives. And Sam Elliott, now, you know, he's I don't like he's old. You know, he's a little less sociable, but
when he is around people,
but he's totally say that again.
Kind of like his character in 1983.
Yeah, he's a little less sociable, but he is so approachable and friendly.
Yeah.
And he'll like, you know, it was not uncommon. It wasn't every day, but it was not uncommon for him to make a pass over by our camp and, you know, say hey to everybody. And anytime he wasn't busy and like around people, you know, he's very quick to like say hello to you and ask you how you're doing and ask some question. They're great people.
I know that some people are gonna have questions about, you know, Faith Hill and Tim McGraw and how they appear to get along or their relationship. Because like Mayo, I don't know if you followed this much, but I remember the tabloids following their relationship from the beginning, and it's always been one that's been depicted as being one of the rare, stable, really solid relationships in the entertainment industry. And I know that he's talked before about how he had to she gave him an ultimatum about his alcoholism and he had to go to rehab, but he got that, well, as much as one can, right? He got that behind him. And so I'm just curious, you Mayo, what was your perception of their relationship, or did you see them interacting much off camera?
There were very few times that I can actually like pinpoint moments where they were interacting for a long enough period of time to see what they are like with each other.
Right.
But the times that I did get to see that, it seems that that's very much the case. They seem very, very in love. They seem very very one with each other. Like they are one solid force, and like no one's really going to come between them type of situation.
Mm-hmm.
And then I'd say like the other experience that I had witnessing anything with them was whenever there were intense days of filming, because obviously we're filming a pretty dark show.
Right.
There may have been times where one or the other had a rough day and was having to sit for a second and like gather themselves, collect themselves. And one of those moments was Faith genuinely not being able to stop crying. And you could tell that Tim was like trying not to overbear her, but also was still trying to be very supportive and like, you'll get through this. It'll be okay. You're doing really good. That type of situation. But they seem to have a very good back and forth, like very staple, very strong, very, they're probably top tier in my opinion, relationship wise.
Well,
in the celebrity.
Cool.
Yeah,
that's cool to hear. So you brought up something that I actually want to ask. I want to ask you both about. You mentioned that this is a dark, at times it's a thematically dark show. It is about pioneers in the 19th century, and my impression when I watched it, my impression was that I was surprised. I don't know why I would be, but I was actually surprised by how bleak at times it was, and it might have something to do with the particular episode that I started with. It was interesting, and I'm not giving away any plot details here, but it was interesting how the episode started with almost a kind of a montage of different people dying in these tragic, random ways, getting bit by a rattlesnake. But I'm curious, how do you feel about the themes of the show? What is most maybe interesting to you or striking to you about how the film develops those darker aspects?
It's very delightful for me personally, whenever I get to see very real themes. It's satisfying to watch this play out in the final product. We're finally seeing it on the screen of like, yeah, this is no Little House on the Prairie. Like, this is not a happy story. This is putting you right in the face of like, what do you think these people were going through? Like, this was not like that they were even here. Like all this stuff that had just reached a critical mass. That we're like, we got to get the fuck out of here. They killed.
And in a TV show like the one that you're doing, it's really about this. One of the things about is this kind of like trying to work through our relationship to nature, right?
Yeah. Oh yeah. Because, and as you see along the journey that these pioneers take, everything is trying to kill you.
Yeah.
Right.
Like every piece of foliage, every plant, every critter, everything out here is trying to kill you. The weather's trying to kill you. The river's trying to kill you. Like everything is out to get you.
And I talk about this sometimes in my classes that I've taught, which is that we get very used to civilization and the comforts and the safety of civilization, and and our idea of nature is actually nature that's completely tamed, like, I'm going to go to the park. Well, that park, has it's been manicured. There's exterminators who have, sprayed. And so, I'm saying like, it's very tamed nature and actual nature. There's a really famous, for our poetry lovers, there's a really famous poem by Tennyson, Alfred Lord Tennyson, In Memoriam, and it's about death. But one of the famous lines from it is nature red in tooth and claw. This idea of nature having blood dripping from its teeth. It's really interesting. And then that final line, Mayo, you can tell me what you think about this. I feel like one of the things she's saying there when she says this world was not made for us is that if there is a God, God's agenda may be more self-centered in a sense than what we would like to think. Like our view of God tends to be, especially in the Christian tradition, it's so human focused. Christ died for us. Yeah. And I think it's interesting to think that actually, we are extremely small and insignificant. And not to say that if there's a God, he or she doesn't love us, but there's a bigger picture going on. And we are transient beings. We are here and then we're gone. And I think that's a very frightening thought, for us. I don't know. What do you think, Mayo?
In my opinion, what that means for me and what I got from that is humans are inherently selfish and self-centered. So we automatically assume that these things were made for us or done for us, and it's, me, I, instead of, oh, well, maybe it was done for this reason or another. But
there's no reason.
Yeah, or maybe there's no reason. And we're all just kind of floating here on a rock in space, as people like to say.
Well, I think, it's even if, and I'm just speaking personally for myself, as someone who I call myself a theist. I do believe in God, and I do believe that God has a benevolent orientation towards humans. But I also think that God has, and the universe and all of this is much, much bigger than our own personal individual interest, especially if it turns out that we have a soul that is eternal. Then the particulars of our lives, not always, but may not often be as important to God as we would like to think. And I think that's what both of you are getting at in different ways, and what the writer was getting at is that is a deeply disquieting feeling. We would like to be the center of the universe, and we're not, and so that's interesting. But you bring up something else too. But you talk about like the fact that this show at times it does have a cynical orientation or pessimistic orientation. Should art be, is it okay that art is so, and films are so relentlessly pessimistic often now? This is a complaint that I get in my classes that I've taught before, but I teach film classes, or I used to. And I would get complaints sometimes from students about the fact that the film list, the assigned films were very cynical, had a very, dark view of the world, et cetera, et cetera. And so I did try to start over the years adding films that had a more positive message and stuff. But at the same time, it is very interesting that when you look at novels, even if we're going back to classical stuff, we look at Shakespeare plays or whatever, to present day, you will see that artists write about problems and conflict and death and suffering much, much, much more than happy things. And so I guess my first question would be, as artists, as people who've worked in different mediums and who've done some very, thematically dark stuff, what are your thoughts about that critique of art? Or what do you think what is beneficial to society about showing murder and mayhem or whatever on screen?
I think the most natural place for me to start is it's some of the more provoking things. Like, I'll ask you this: how often do you go out to a restaurant or a store and you have a great experience and you get on your phone right afterwards and you go rate that place?
Right. Never. Almost never.
But
yeah.
If you have a very bad experience, how quick are you to go on there and rate the place?
No, you're exactly right.
And so the stresses, the negativities, whatever brings tension into our lives, that puts a fire on you a lot quicker than, something happy. Because when you're happy, you kind of you're more inclined to zen out and just relax and like melt into all of it, versus, the call to action you feel when there's tension under you.
For me, I don't just do modeling and acting. I also paint. I also write poetry. I'm trying to put out my book this year.
Wow.
And
what's your book? Wait, I'm sorry. What's your book?
A poetry book with a bunch of poems that I've written over a long period of time. I do stuff all over the art community. I don't see it from just the film side of things. Have kind of the other side of everything when it comes to the art community, whether it be painting or writing community because of poetry. And so because I have my hands in a bunch of different areas of the art world, I kind of see it as more of a statistic thing. Statistically speaking, artists, no matter what type of art you may do, are more likely than not to have some sort of mental instability. If we are, as a collective art community, if we have this overlying mental like handicap, is what a lot of people like to say,
right,
then we're most likely going to talk about it because it's there, but it's not talked about enough. So
right.
I think that winds up pouring into film or into paintings or into poetry or whatever it may be. And I think that's kind of where it comes from. Like they want to start a conversation about something. They want people to talk
That
about
they're experiencing, like an organic, it's coming out organically.
Yeah.
And
for instance, if
yeah.
you have film nowadays, a lot of film and TV are trying to accurately depict assault or harassment or things of that nature, because that hasn't been heavily talked about in past years. And I think that could be a decent reason why, is just it's a topic or a conversation starter.
Yeah, I think that you're dead on about that, and that's actually something that I've mentioned before in class. So I go through, and when I get this complaint, which I get it every semester, and and so there's several things I like to say to head it off. One of them is, I do mention what you said, is that there seems to be a significantly higher degree of whatever term you want to use, mental illness or instability or what have you. And I don't say that with any judgment, because I've gone through, I'm a chronic depressive and so forth. So anyway, and some people would say other things perhaps, but I am, but I think that look, the art, and y'all know this better than I do, but I do think that the artistic sensibility it's about having a very wide range, a wide spectrum of feeling, and the ability to really immerse oneself in emotions and a wide emotions. And so it would be only natural.
It's a very vulnerable thing.
Yes, and look, so that's one thing I say. Another thing that I say is, let's just be honest about the state of the world, the condition of the world. Yes, like you thought, like the monologue in 1883, there's a lot of beauty and wonderful things and everything, but we have to be honest about the fact that we have been put into a really place in a lot of, so what I like to say to my students is, look, I didn't invent the things that you're seeing in these films. What I'm trying to get you to do, and this is what I think ultimately is the value of stuff like this, is to confront the dark truths and realities of life, and like Nemo said, in a communal environment where you feel like you are experiencing this with others, and so there is a sense of safety, hopefully, in that. And so anyway, I think that's important. And then the other thing that I tell my students is that we have to be able to understand evil. We have to try to understand in the sense that how can I successfully navigate this world, or protect myself, or know what to try to protect myself from, if I have not confronted, if I have not looked at the nature of evil, or what happens to me if I get cancer or something, but I've avoided thinking about death my entire life. Where does that leave me? And so I think that there's tremendous value. Did you want to say something, Nemo?
The student complaining, any student that would complain about the pain-filled art, almost from a Jordan Peterson perspective, I would challenge that student, to really sit with yourself and to really sit with the emotions and what it brings up for you. Because I would wager that if, whatever pain-filled art we're exploring, if it makes you uncomfortable, I would almost guarantee you have this activated within you on a very deep, unconscious level that you have buried away. And that's why it stimulates you in that way. That's why it agitates, because it's something that's still alive within you in your own history that you refuse to face. And so as a survival mechanism, you demonize it to further push it away from you and further cast it out of your identity, because you can't face yourself that you actually identify with that.
That's exactly right. And from a psychoanalytic point of view, it's dead on. And that's the thing too, that I tell students is, I understand that there is a difference between exposing oneself to something or working through something, in art, and just wallowing in degradation. I do understand that at some points, certain horror films, there might be some kind of a line that's crossed in terms of making violence pornographic or whatever. But that's a whole other thing that I would love to talk with you about. As people like me who really value and really like dark films and and dark themes and and horror films and things like that. So before we wrap up, I'm just curious, is anything else that you wanna mention to our audience, or any upcoming? You said you've got some stuff in the works. Is there anything you want to promote or talk about?
She does have a feature film that just came out. I was
just about to bring that up. Yeah. It's coming out in January. It was put into some of our film festivals that were just going on this past few months.
Wow. What is it?
It's called Glitter Tang.
I love it.
Look out for the character Kim. That's me. But yeah, it's supposed to be about a different take on unicorns. That's all I'm going to give y'all. It's in the horror genre. Yeah. It's in the horror genre. So right up y'all's alley. I have a lot of pictures coming out too soon because I'm going to Hawaii. So.
Well, I would like to have you on here, and like I said, I'd like to have you on here just to talk about your modeling work and stuff. So we'll definitely do that. But what about you, Nemo? Anything you want to leave us with?
Be excellent to each other. Party on.
That sounds good. All right. Good motto to live by. All right. To our audience, thank you for joining me. And I'm going to have these two back definitely for sure in the not too distant future. Check them out on the 1883 show. And especially if you want to see a lot of death and despair. No, it's got a lot of positive themes actually. We didn't get to, we'll talk about that next time actually, that there's a lot of really positive, interesting themes. Okay, everybody, as always, remember to like and subscribe and hit the bell. Hit me up on PayPal, Patreon, and I will see you all later. Bye-bye.